Good morning, it's Shanna. Okay, so a couple days ago I commented on, man, I should remember her channel name. Her name is Mims. Tarot with Mims. I'm sorry, I don't remember her channel name. I should, because I'm there all the time. Regardless, I'll link her below since I've mentioned her, but I was watching one of her videos, and as part of my comment, one of my replies to her video, I said something about a deck being like my favorite pair of jeans. And I thought, you know what, that'd be a fun prompt. So I put together 10 prompts to fall in line with that concept, and that's what we're doing today. I have 10 prompts, 10 decks, a mix of tarot and oracle. So if you choose to also do this, feel free to use whatever decks, fit the prompt for you. So the first prompt is a well-worn sweater, a deck that wraps you in quiet wisdom. So for that one, I chose my Death Doula Oracle, which I just love. I know this sounds kind of weird for some people. All decks are just going to be weird for some people and be great for others. Like, I get that. But I love this one. It does exactly that. It wraps you in quiet wisdom. Like, it's just this quiet, kind of soft messages that really, what element would I associate with this deck? I would probably say air, just because it really kind of gets in your head as far as like what the meaning is, and digging into the guidebook and having rituals within the guidebook, which, by the way, I appreciate. I think that's a really cool touch. But it does it in a way that feels safe. Death Doula Oracle sounds like it could be very affronting or confrontational, but in my experience, it's a very safe deck. It's a safe place to go to ask questions and receive messages that are deeper than just what you might get sometimes with some tarot decks or some oracle decks. It feels a little hand-holdy, but in a way that's not, why can I never think of words when I'm sitting here? It doesn't talk down to you. It doesn't simplify the answer. There's no simplistic, workaround with this deck. I love the images. I just think you can get so much out of them. This is kind of my contemplative photography deck. And I've mentioned it before. I've done photography. I understand photography. And so I can appreciate these images for what they are. And I very much enjoy that. I like the colors. I think it's like this deck does not scream messages to you. It whispers them to you in the softest way, but also very honest. And it just comes from a place of introspection, safety. Like I said, I'm not very good at shadow work. I've not yet figured out shadow work in the broader sense of the term, which we'll kind of get to that. That's a later prompt. And I don't use this deck as shadow work, but I feel like it kind of leans into that concept. And I feel like no matter what your question is, this deck is going to deliver the answer in a way that's both understandable, relatable, understanding, and sensitive. And I think that's a big part of it. It's a sensitive deck. Like, it holds the emotions for you. It has them within the image. It doesn't require you to keep them. And in some ways, I feel like it will take those for you and keep them for you. Which is why, while I haven't yet, I feel like this would be an important deck to remember to cleanse regularly. Cleansing decks is funny for me. I like the idea of it, But I also feel like sometimes if I've cleansed a deck, it's erased all of the energy and the intention I've put into it. And so I hesitate to do that. Anyway, that's a side tangent. But this is the Death Doula, and that was the Well-Worn Sweater, a deck that wraps you in quiet wisdom. Okay, next I have a Familiar Working Path, a deck that knows where you're headed before you do. So this one, I mean, if you didn't guess this one for that prompt, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, because this is the deck that I created. And so this is the coin that came with, or it didn't come with, I ordered it separate, the Forager's Daughter. It's gorgeous. I love it. And because it has a bird and I love the Forager's Daughter, I thought it would be pretty in here with this deck. So because I created this deck and my heart and soul and everything else went into it over the course of, more than a year, I just felt like, this deck knows me. It understands me. It knows what I'm going to say. It knows what I'm thinking. And it knows this because I gave it life. I gave this deck life. So for it not to know me would feel weird. I mean, the guidebook was written by me, so the meanings behind these birds in this context are all me. So yeah, this deck understands me. We talk regularly, but the voice of this deck is very much me. The voice of the guidebook is very much me. And the reason why I chose Audubon's images was because of my grams and my love of birds, and which came from her. And just this kind of warm and cozy, again, it feels like a safe space to be. This deck has a cozy vibe. It's warm, it's quiet, it speaks softly, which, I don't know. If you know anything about me, I am not a loud person. I don't enjoy being around loud people. I'm not like offended by them. I don't dislike them. It dysregulates me. I'm not good at it. So sometimes, like if I'm at work or even with my husband, if someone starts talking too loud, I'm not afraid of saying, "You're speaking too loud. I need you to not speak so loud." It's too much for me. So this deck is good for me because it does have that quiet energy. And sometimes when I'm using this deck, something fun I like to do is to pull up a playlist on Spotify and just have either like some kind of low instrumental, not necessarily lo-fi, or I'll actually just pull up like birds singing, just like really, really quiet. I don't want it to be distracting, but yeah. So this is a Familiar Walking Path, a deck that knows where you're headed before you do. That is the Little Bird Tarot and Field Guide. By me. There we go. Man, hopefully I've been on the camera this whole time. Goodness, I hope so. Okay. All right. The next one is Warm Socks on a Cold Floor, a deck that grounds you in comfort. So this one, it's probably not one you see a lot, period, just because I feel like maybe when this deck was out, TarotTube wasn't really a thing. So this deck doesn't get talked about a whole lot. But it's extremely comforting. I keep this one on my morning altar, which is just a small altar I put together. I have like a sunstone skull. I have the goddess Soul on there. I have an amethyst from my grandmother. And I have this deck. And I don't pull a card every morning. That's not necessarily my routine or ritual, but it is sitting out. And so on mornings where I feel like I need just a little bit of guidance, a little bit of hand holding, I will pull out this deck and shuffle it until I get a jumper, and then I'll hold that message for the day. So the messages are on the back, which I love. It's really short. There's not a lot to it. There's no guidebook. But I don't know, the artwork resonates with me. It feels warm and very 90s, I guess. I don't know when this was published. I have no idea. but it feels very comforting. Something about the artwork feels familiar to me, which I think anybody can agree that if a tarot deck feels familiar, it's probably going to be a comfort deck. So this very much feels like pulling on that warm, cozy pair of socks just to kind of get that feeling of like, ah, okay, now I can get warm. Now I can settle in. I get this card a lot. It's a good reminder. Let's see. It is a really good reminder. So she's so pretty. I love the colors. I like that there's different colors at the top of each card. This is also one I get pretty regularly. I love this one. It's funny, flipping through this, there are some cards I don't think I've ever had jump for me. So I just really appreciate the way it holds space for me in a tender kind of way. Again, it's another soft-spoken deck. It understands my need for gentle approach. And I appreciate that. So this is Warm Socks on a Cold Floor, a deck that grounds you in comfort. And the backs. I mean, it's not even just the tops that are different colors. The back, the text space is a different color. And I love that. It's a weakness. That is Wisdom for Healing by Carolyn Miss. Okay. Next, we have Your Grandmother's Recipe Box, a deck that holds generational wisdom. Again, if you've been here for a minute, this would have to be the one I'd pick. This is the deck I use to talk with my grandmother, have conversations with her, communicate with her. And I love this one. It's so good. This is the Forager's Daughter Afterlight Edition. So this is her second printing of this deck. The first printing has burgundy, navy, and like a hunter green border, where this one kind of has the cream border. I mean, it goes without saying, or it goes without explanation. I use this one to talk with her. This is her deck. I didn't buy this deck for the purpose of, speaking with her, but after the first time using it for that purpose, it has since become her deck. So this is a deck that sits out all the time. I don't think I'll ever put it away. I do like to pull out the first edition during the holidays, like November, December, just because of the colors. And I will use the other deck occasionally for other things, but I don't know. The jury's out on that one, whether or not I'll continue to do that or just have both decks just for her. But this Afterlight edition is just hers. So, and the guidebook's lovely. I'll show you here. I also keep this out. I just like to have them out because if I'm ever sitting here and I have a question, or I'm feeling frustrated or sad or lonely or whatever emotion it is, I like to have this close at hand so that I can just pull the deck out, ask my question, and talk with her. Or, if I feel called to have a conversation, like a deeper ritual type, light a candle, have an offering type reading, then again, it's right here. I don't have to go look for it. It's not in a drawer anywhere. It's not in the other room. So this one's very comforting. And honestly, just having it sitting next to me is comforting because it feels like, she's sitting here with me, even when we're not talking with each other. So this is Your Grandmother's Recipe Box, a deck that holds generational wisdom. Oh, did I show the backs? I'm sorry, I've been really bad at showing the backs. I love the backs of this one. It's gorgeous. My goodness, here we go. Okay. Next, I have a window seat on a stormy day, a deck that makes space for shadow work. So coming back to the shadow work that I mentioned earlier, I guess I'll just say I don't know what the hell I'm doing with shadow work. I understand the concept, I guess, but and maybe I was going to say, I was going to say maybe I don't need to do shadow work, but I definitely do. I mean, it's there. I know there are things that, you know, could be looked at that have that shadow work aspect, but I don't really know how. And I've Googled it and I've watched videos, and maybe I just haven't quite found the right way for me, a method or some kind of ritual. I don't know. But this deck is my shadow work deck. I mean, if ever I was going to do shadow work, this is the one that's called to me. So I do occasionally flip through it. I adore it. I love it. It acknowledges the fact that, yes, it is my shadow work deck, and it's just patiently waiting on my shelf for me to figure out what that means for me. So if you have a ritual or a routine or something around shadow work and you would like to share that with me, I'd love to hear, because I don't know what I'm doing. I think the messages in the guidebook are great. Just succinct, to the point. I love this card. Yeah, that's all I have to say about it. I feel like I'd have more if I had a practice to share, I guess. And, you know, going back to speaking softly, decks speaking softly, this one speaks very softly. It talks in hushed tones. It doesn't move too quickly. It doesn't, you know, it's not startling. It's not harsh. It's like that quiet stillness right before dusk. Right before you know, in the middle of summer, right before the bugs start singing, the crickets come out, or the frogs. It's that quiet hush right before dusk. And that's this deck for me. And that is Tarot Landscapes. Okay, that was a window seat on a stormy day, a deck that makes space for shadow work. Okay, next I have that one pair of jeans you never have to think about, a deck that just gets you without trying. And I realized the Outlaw Oracle is exactly that. This deck just, I'm literally wearing said pair of jeans today. I have this one pair that I've had, oh my gosh, I don't even know, 15 years, 10 years, I don't know. They are thin. I only wear them at home because I'm afraid that any day now they're just gonna like tear through. Like the thin areas are just going to rip and that will be it. I have patched them. I have sewn them. I adore them. They just fit so nice and they're soft and they're just a little bit loose. So, you know, they're comfortable. I love them. And that's this deck. It takes me back to like that first day that you try on that pair of jeans and it's just the perfect pair of jeans. And they just stick with you. They stay with you. They see you through the thick. They see you through the thin. They know you. They understand the way you move. They understand, you know, they understand where to stretch just right for that perfect fit. And this is that deck. It's comfortable. The texture's perfect. The messages are amazing. The colors are just perfectly on point. Every card brings me back to a place and time of my childhood and early teen years, you know, maybe up to about 13. So adolescence. This is my comfortable jeans deck. I adore it. And this card, I just heard that Hillary has sold out of her first edition, which is this one, and will be releasing a second edition, and she's changing this card. I guess people commented that they couldn't relate to this guy, and I understand. Not a lot of people were raised in this kind of world, but this was very much my childhood. This is my dad. Yeah, I mean, literally the end. So yeah, this is my perfect pair of jeans deck, the one I never have to think about. If I just want a message that packs a punch, that doesn't give a shit if it hurts your feelings. Now, it's not going to scream it at you. It's not going to scream it at me. But it's going to tell you like it is. No bullshit. What's that old saying? Pull up by your bootstraps. That's this deck. And I love it. This is, yeah. I don't know how many more ways I can say it. I think you understand. So that's the Outlaw Oracle. That one pair of jeans you never have to think about. A deck that just gets you without trying. Okay, up next. Your chipped but perfect coffee mug. A deck that doesn't need you to be fancy to show up. I don't know if you know me, but I'm not a fancy person whatsoever. And the Morgan Greer is just that. It gets me. It's a little, this is probably my most decrepit box, which, you know, all things said, it's not that decrepit, but this is the one I keep downstairs. This is the one, it's at the front of the bookshelf. This is the one that I go to when I'm not like in a serious sit down at my tarot desk and read mood. I'm just like, oh my God, I have this thing that's happening right now. What do I do? Quick, go. And this deck's like, yep, I got you. Here's your answer. Here's your cards. And literally, I just did a reading with this. I posted it on Instagram. And it just, I mean, even just looking at it now, it's giving me goosebumps. It was so spot on. And I did it in a 2-part reading. I'm being vague, but that's okay. I did it in 2 parts. So the morning before this event, I pulled a bunch of cards and I was like, okay, that was kind of gave me my vibe of how this event would go. And then when I came home, I pulled 2 more cards for some participants within this event. And it was exactly perfect. It's perfect. It's straightforward. It gets the job done. If you're gonna pour in your black coffee, it's gonna hold it. It's gonna keep it hot. If you pour in your, half a cup of creamer and then fill the rest with coffee, so you've got mostly creamer in it's still gonna give you all the right answers. There's no bullshit in this deck. It's not fancy. It doesn't need any it's not a collage deck. It's not an art deck. It's just this Rider-Waite-Smith clone, close up and personal. It's quite serious, but not in a stuffy way. I adore this card so much. One of my favorites. Look at these purples. And yeah, it's just that. Chipped but perfect coffee mug. This is the one I will grab if I'm downstairs and I just want a quick reading in the morning, or if it's during the summer and I want to go sit outside and I won't even say necessarily an everyday question, but if I don't want to have to sit and think about the cards or the message it's giving me, this is the one I'll grab, because this is just straight to the point. No fancy language, no fancy imagery. It just is what it is. No apologies. And it's gonna be straight and true every single time. Love this deck, the Morgan Greer. That is the Chipped but Perfect coffee mug, a deck that doesn't need you to be fancy to show up. Yeah. It's funny, my grandmother and my mom were both, I would say, especially in their, 20s, 30s, 40s, they were both very fancy. They worked at They worked for the county in the state where I grew up. And, you know, they had dresses and they had nylons and the high heels and they had dress suits and they wore jackets. And of course, my grandmother wore, you know, gloves back in the day, or they had their hats and very fancy. And so growing up, my mom really wanted to help me embody that energy. And I felt suffocated in any of those clothes. I can't wear a blazer to save my life. Wearing heels, I'd rather not. Thank you. And so, yeah, I'm not a fancy person. It makes me uncomfortable. I think it's beautiful and I would love to be able to embody that energy, but my body does not let me wear things that are uncomfortable. So anyway, that was a side tangent that no one needed to know, but now you do. So, all right, next up, prompt number 8. That book you've read so many times, the pages are falling out. A deck that knows all your stories and loves you anyway. So that would be my Guardian Angel Tarot cards by Doreen Virtue and Radley Valentine. It's funny, when I first saw this deck, I think it was probably on Don Michelle's, maybe on Lisa Pepez's. This was a few years ago, and I just thought, wow, that's some deck. And then for some reason, I just decided I needed it, and I've not looked back since. It's the perfect deck for this prompt. I keep this one by my bedside. I feel like that's kind of a popular theme for this one in particular. It just has these messages of, like, I don't know, messages of like what grandma might tell you, you know? They're sweet, they're soft. It's a little bit of a hug. I'm actually not going to stack these. Maybe I'll stack them because they have a little bit of a bow on them. And I don't even care. These are impossible to shuffle. It is very thick cardstock, and I've trimmed them. I don't know if there was a border or if they were just thicker. I don't know. But yeah, these are an overhand and barely an overhand because they're a little sticky, like, I don't know. Anyway. The book I've read so many times, the pages are falling out. This is a deck that will likely go to my grave with me. This is another one where, while I don't necessarily feel like I'm talking with my grandma when I use this deck, it's one that, it's like if I were to write her a letter, like if I were to go out of state and I wrote her a letter and I was like, "Dear Grandma, I'm going through this thing right now. I don't know what to do. What would you do?" And she wrote me a letter back, and I received it a few days later, and I sat and I read it. That's what this deck is. You know, it's not really her speaking to me, but it is a message that she would have given me. Absolutely. And these colors are very much, you know, my childhood. 80s, pink, floral, wallpaper. I had a pink canopy bed when I was little. Just that, you know, this is the whole vibe. This is I'm just a little person. I don't know what I'm doing. Please help me. Tell me what to do kind of deck. So yeah, I like this one. It's great. And I don't really ever have to pull more than 1 or 2 cards. Sometimes, like I said, I like to use jumpers. And so sometimes if more than one will jump, I will, you know, put them in order and read them that way, but it doesn't necessarily need more than one. So yeah, this is the Guardian Angel. And, you know, with a lot of decks anymore, you know, if you don't have this deck and if you're looking for it, please be sure that you're getting a real deck and not a knockoff. I understand the desire to save money, or I don't know. I'm getting preachy. I'll stop. I just feel bad. And maybe, I mean, these are out of print decks, so it's like, who's really getting the money? Just the publisher, I guess. I don't know. I just feel like, I don't know. For me personally, I feel like a deck that's been created dishonestly has a dishonest energy about it. So it's my opinion, and that's all it is. But it's my opinion that we should always work towards getting the real and authentic deck by the creator, by the publisher. So that aside. Okay, the 9th prompt is That Playlist You've Had Since High School, a deck that knows all your phases and still vibes with you. And for that one, I chose the Everyday Witch Tarot because this is the deck that I learned tarot on, that I finally sat down and learned tarot. I've had a tarot deck since high school that I kept till I was 30 something, and then I rehomed it. It was the only deck I had, and when I came back to tarot a few years ago, I immediately regretted getting rid of it. So that was the deck I wanted to pull out for this prompt, but I don't ever use it. This deck is the deck that I learned tarot on, although I did learn it on a counterfeit deck, despite what I just got done saying. I purchased it before I realized that there was such a thing as counterfeit decks. So it's the one I wrote on. It's the one I learned it on. So I still have it. I keep it close, but I don't really ever use it. But this deck feels like not only does it know all of my phases, but it embodies all of my phases. And it just, I don't know. I like this one. It's a comfy, cozy, not overly serious, like group of teenage friends who now we've all grown up, but we don't really feel like adults, right? Like these people are just playing at being adults. Like, sure, they have jobs and cars and mortgages or rent. They pay insurance, they pay their bills, they drive their cars. Maybe they have families, they have pets, they have responsibilities. But at the end of the day, they go home and they put on these costumes and they just want to be themselves. And I feel like that's kind of how it was in high school and how I feel even now sometimes. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Do you know what you're doing? If you do, congratulations. I'm jealous because I don't. And I just feel like that this deck gets that. And it's like, you know what? Me neither. It's cool. Here, pull a card and I'll help you through it. I feel like this would be a deck that if it were to give me a jumper and I was like, that doesn't really make sense, I don't understand it, it'd be like, oh, wait, pull a different one. Here, let's try again. Let's try a different one. And it would be unapologetic about it. It'd be like, just kidding. Here, this is the real one. And I love that energy about it. It's fun, it's silly, it wants to have a good time. It wants to have ice cream for dinner. It wants to call in sick once in a while, even though they're not sick. That's this deck. That's the Everyday Witch Tarot. All right. And that last, the last was the number 9, That Playlist You've Had Since High School, a deck that knows all your phases and still vibes with you. Okay. Next is your go-to takeout order. You don't even have to think about a deck that just works without the fuss. And that's my Oak, Ash, and Thorn. This one just, literally just that. It just works without the fuss. Ask it a question, it says, sure, here's your answer. It's quiet, it's hushed. Although I would say that's not as quiet as some of my other decks. I feel like these animals can be pretty loud and cause a ruckus now and then. But I don't have to think about this. And I love the energy of this deck. It's very like otherworldly. I don't want to say storybook because that doesn't really feel like storybook to me. But it feels like an alternate universe where these animals are here, maybe, and there's no humans, but they talk to me and they tell me the answers to my questions, and they talk to me about, the things that make them sad or happy or scared. They tell me why they're sleepy. They tell me about their families. And when I have a question, they answer me honestly. They're like, yeah, this is the deal. So listen up or don't. They don't care if I'm going to listen or not. That's not their job. Their job is to just tell me the truth. I love this deck. It's so pretty. Are you guys planning on getting the next deck, the spider deck? I definitely am. I'm afraid of spiders. I dislike them. I'll do just about anything to avoid spiders, but I'm excited for the deck. It looks cute. So this is your go-to takeout order. You don't even have to think about it. A deck that just works without the fuss. And that is the Oak, Ash, and Thorn. So that is all the decks I have for the prompts today. That's all I have. So thank you for being here in this, second week of January. Time, I don't know what. So thank you for being here. I will catch up with you guys next week.